It's time for Political Buzz, the television forum to discuss politics and issues of interest for all of Western New York. Now, from the WBBZ television studio at the Eastern Hills Mall, this is Political Buzz.
Hey everybody, John DeShula with you here on your hometown television station. Coming up in just a little bit, driving the economy of Western New York with the Buffalo Auto Show coming up. We're going to find out how important the auto industry is for our hometown. But first, Donald Trump flew into Western New York. It was a chilly night, Friday, January 31st, over at Salvatore's Italian Gardens, but it warmed up when the Donald spoke to the crowd. Take a look at what he had to say.
But what you need is you need leadership. You need unity. You need victory. You can win if you want to. It's not going to be easy. It's a state that's very, very hard. Presidential candidates, Republicans, don't even come and campaign here. But you can win because there are so many things that are being done so badly. I believe that if I ran and if I won, we would become one of the great energy capitals of this world.
Why was Donald Trump in Western New York? Well, this is what could be the beginning of what some say and hope might be a run to take the governor's job in Albany. And one of the individuals involved in this process is Michael Caputo, political strategist. And Michael, good friend, and thanks for joining us on Political Buzz.
Thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome. Now, you and David DiPietro, both from East Aurora, although I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but both
It's the water.
it is. Both connected with Donald Trump. And I find that fascinating because I don't get the sense that Donald is the kind of guy who just has meetings with just anybody. So, you know, here you are, Republican strategist, trying to get Donald Trump into the race. And two guys from East Aurora helped make that happen. How did you connect?
Well, actually, this started long before my involvement. Assemblyman David DiPietro was sitting in Lucarelli's parking lot with Assemblyman Bill Nojay, and they were lamenting the fact that we had no winnable candidate for governor, and it was in Lucarelli's parking lot where they came up with the Donald Trump idea. They floated that idea in the media, and Mr. Trump quickly shot that balloon down and said it wasn't something he was thinking about. They came to me in November and they said, Michael, you know, Mr. Trump, we don't want to take a no to the media, so can you organize a meeting? Which we did in early December, and it really just took off.
Well, amazing that it's taken off and so fast. But is he serious? Is he really going to do this?
Well, I know Mr. Trump for several years, but not real well. And I've come to know him a little better during this process. I've seen his private life, his business life. I've been to his, different places. His on his amazing jets. He has an incredible life. And if I were Donald Trump, I would never do it. So if I had to put $100 on something, I'd put it on no, because I think he's crazy to do it.
Interesting.
But I'm providing him with all of the input, and David and Assemblyman Nojay are providing with input, and he's looking at these things, and it's gotten more and more serious. I think he's leaning in. He's certainly past 50-50, and if things move the way that we're trying to move them, he's the inevitable candidate.
Well, the polarizing effect of Donald Trump is interesting. I mean, I've always found him to be an interesting character, but I got to believe that there are people out there, who are struggling to get through the day to make ends meet. And here's this billionaire coming in with the plane and the hair and the Mar-a-Lago and the casinos, going, what connection does he have with the average person?
Well, I think that's a legitimate concern. That's one of the concerns we've discussed. And one thing I've learned about Mr. Trump is he's not the character that they've created on The Apprentice. He's not the caricature that they've put together in the liberal media. He's an engaging person. He's a very nice person. He's a very generous person. When we had an NFTA bus driver who was a hero and saved somebody from jumping off of a bridge here in Buffalo, without even knowing that person, Donald Trump sent him a check for $10,000, which the bus driver, by the way, turned into a foundation. I mean, he's a compassionate person, and when you see that, when he gets in front of people without the lens, the filter of the media or the Hollywood production of The Apprentice, it really comes across. He's connected more than people know, but it's a challenge going forward.
Now, here's a man who has run his businesses. I grew up in Philadelphia. I remember when the casinos opened in Atlantic City. He came in full of bombast. And how is he going to work in a situation in Albany where, and I guess some of the conditions are that some of the Albany insiders get the boot in order for him to make the run.
Right.
How is he going to go in there and deal with people? Some have said, well, he's used to dealing with people. I just don't see that.
Well, you can't build billion-dollar projects without conceding while negotiating. He works with unions, not just in the United States, but around the world. He's put together incredible development projects in areas where the unions hold things in a very tight fist. Mr. Trump knows how to negotiate. He knows how to make deals. His very first book was called The Art of the Deal. I mean, that's what he's about. He's not about going in there and it's my way or the highway. That's the way that's the media caricature, If you look at his empire, which, he inherited a bit of money from his dad, but he's built it into an incredible empire. You can't argue with the fact that this man knows how to make a deal. And in Albany, it'll be a bit of a new culture for him, but it's one I think he'll swim in very well.
He's talking about making sure that the Republican Party is unified. And I look at that, and some have maybe said that that's his way of establishing an out. So if it's not unified, hey, it's not unified, I'm done. And the other controversy that I've read about, and the New York Daily News just did a piece on it the other day, Ed Cox, who's the chairman of the Republican Party across the state, seems like he has his own guy, Astorino, from Westchester County, I believe,
right?
That he likes, who's that guy? I mean, in Buffalo, New York, I don't know who Rob Astorino is. What track record does he have? So it seems like the chairman of the party needs to make everybody unified in order for him to run. What's that relationship like?
Well, we learned this in 2010. I put 30,000 miles on a car with Carl Palladino and never left the state. In the first half of it, we were chasing Ed Cox, the chairman, all across the state. And the last half of it, he was chasing us. I mean, he's an enigmatic character. There's no question. And the one thing that we can understand now, after not just 2010 but 2014, he's not a guy that can lead this party. He's not a guy that you can trust his word on anything. And Mr. Trump has come to understand that. And instead of viewing Mr. Cox, Chairman Cox, as the CEO of a party that he wants to help lead, he now sees Mr. Cox as an impediment. And in fact, if Donald Trump doesn't get in this race, it's going to be because Ed Cox blocked him. And here's the thing that's most interesting. People say that Donald Trump can't win. If you say Donald Trump can't beat Andrew Cuomo, then you're saying no human can beat Andrew Cuomo.
Well, I was going to ask about Andrew Cuomo because here he's coming into Western New York.
Right.
He's in and out of town like a lake effect storm, and he's dumping billions just like they're dumping snow. I have to believe that at some point somebody's going to say, and Donald Trump said something very interesting during that presentation, at least in one of the media interviews. He said, Buffalo, there's nothing happening here, which I thought was kind of an odd negative thing to say. But there are things happening here, despite whatever Governor Cuomo's offered. But here the governor's come in. He's an incumbent, and he is making an investment in Western New York.
Right.
And fairly popular across the state. How does that play into it?
Well, it's interesting. Mr. Trump is not an expert on Western New York. He's just, there are a lot of issues he's going to have to bone up on as a candidate. There's no question. I think he understands that. He knows politics well enough to know that he's going to have to get into some uncomfortable waters and learn more things than he knows. I mean, you have to understand that Donald Trump is looking at Western New York through a different kind of lens. Compared to other places that are on fire with development, there is nothing happening in Buffalo. And if you talk to the average man or woman on the street, the person holding two jobs just to keep a family together, they're not feeling it either. There are a few cranes in the sky, but you compare that to Donald Trump's view. He sees dozens of cranes in the sky every day, and he puts many of them up there. So he sees Buffalo as perhaps something happening, but it really isn't being felt by the people that need to feel it.
Now, I know Cuomo has not been popular with a lot of Republican conservatives.
And by the way, Andrew Cuomo could never get the crowd in Buffalo that Donald Trump did. He had a sellout crowd. They turned away 100 people at the door. And each one of those people paid at least $100 to get in there to raise money for the Republican Party. It's an amazing turnout, and Andrew Cuomo comes here, and they have to drum up people. They got to pull in people off the street to go sit and listen to him talk.
Well, I know that he's not been popular with the SAFE Act, and I know that that's been hanging over his head. But I will go back to saying he's an incumbent. He does have some traction in the state, and there are critics of Donald Trump that say, maybe if he looks at some polling, he'll step out of this because he's not the kind of guy who's going to step into something and lose.
Right. Well, we see the polling that came out from Siena Research, which is an arm of the Cuomo administration, basically, and they're laying out that they're basically saying that if the race were held today, that Donald Trump wouldn't even get Carl Palladino's numbers. We know that's absolutely false. That's ridiculous in its absolute erroneous nature. So you have to disregard any poll that's held when nobody's even declared a candidacy. Governor Cuomo wasn't even a candidate yet officially. The fact is this: we talked earlier about how if you don't think Donald Trump can beat Andrew Cuomo, you're saying no human can beat Andrew Cuomo. I was one of the people that believed that. But I look at Andrew Cuomo as a transformative kind of candidate. It's a candidate model I've never seen, and I've done 77 campaigns in 5 different countries. I've never seen a candidate model like this. He has 125% name identification. Now, he has some high negatives that you have to beat down, but the numbers you see now are before Donald Trump spends $1 on television defining himself, before Andrew Cuomo defines him. And the day that Donald Trump gets into this race, Andrew Cuomo is in a race he's never seen before.
Well,
he has to start raising money like crazy.
Spend some money, no question. Let's talk a little bit about Carl Palladino. He's a regular on our show. He helped establish the show, and he's a part of our family here.
Right.
And you and I met first when you were running his campaign.
Right.
And there was a little bit of a fallout there, and there's a photo of you when you guys were putting that together. What was Carl like when he was running for governor? What happened, and how have you patched it back up?
Well, Carl and I don't agree on everything. I don't think Carl agrees with anyone on everything. And we started, let's say, seeing other people after the campaign. I fell in love with Carl, and more importantly, his family during that race, because they endured such a substantial beating. I did everything I could to ward off some of the blows, to some of the blows that were aimed at his family. It was a despicable effort to destroy a good man. And after driving around the state with him and some other important characters in his entourage, like Russ Thompson and some others, you grow to love the man. You know that he's flawed. We are all flawed. But there was an incredible video that was done by, I believe, a Newsday photographer. I mean, Carl was in it for the right reasons. And he's in it today for the right reasons. And the idea of trying to put together a candidacy to beat Andrew Cuomo has kind of brought us together again. I'm really happy of that. I mean, he's done some great things in the meantime on the school board. I think he'll continue to do so. And if Mr. Trump runs, I think Carl will probably play a pretty important role, certainly out here in Western New York.
Interesting, and they met too.
I'll tell you, they talk on the phone almost daily now. I mean, I wish you could have been in the room when me and Nick Langworthy, our chairman here in Erie County, and some other, Dave DiPietro and I, introduced Donald Trump to Carl Palladino. You would have wanted to be a fly on that wall.
I bet.
But they're really a lot alike in a lot of ways, and very different in very important ways. And Carl really likes Mr. Trump, and Mr. Trump raves about Carl.
We'll hear more about that when Carl comes back here on Political Buzz. And Michael, you're welcome to join us again too.
Anytime, please. I'm a fan, I'm a viewer, and I'd love to be back.
Thanks, Michael. Michael Caputo, everybody. We'll be back with more Political Buzz right after this.